Did you see what I just did there?
Yeah.
I want to get to the core of things today. And before we start, if you look, before we really crack in, look at Ephesians 4. Ephesians 4, I'm not sure what I give you. Did I give you 4:17? Yeah. This I say to you, therefore, and testify in the Lord, that you should no longer walk in the rest, as the rest of the Gentiles walk, in the futility of their mind. The futility of your mind. See, I don't know about you, but I got saved, but my thinking didn't change. And we talk so much about renewing your mind. Can you go to 4:23 for me? But it's going deeper than that. And be renewed in the spirit of your mind. And I've talked slightly about this before, but we're going to take a different angle of it. Going deeper. See, sometimes you can be working on the outer things, the outer muscles. You know, even in training, I'll be honest, I would prefer to work on dumbbell curls and work on the biceps because I find that easy. But see, the bit that I hate and I will do anything to get out of is core work. And core work is just one of those ones, you know, it's getting down, doing the V's, doing the sit-ups and stuff like that. It takes so much out of you, but it's the vital part of you because the core of your body provides the stability of your body. The core of your mind will provide the stability of your mind. And this is what I want to really get to today. And I'm going to take this, do you know what, I don't really have a sermon. I've got 3 scriptures. And in those 3 scriptures, I just want to bring out what God has been speaking to me personally about. You see, I don't know about you, but sometimes you can be doing all the things that the preachers have told you to do. You could be meditating on the Word. You could be confessing the Word. But still, whenever the storms of life come against you, you've got the intrinsic reaction comes up. You behave the same way. You start to, maybe you're a worrier at heart. Yet the Bible tells us to worry for nothing. Maybe you're always struck with anxiety and fear. Yet the Bible tells us in Philippians to be anxious for nothing. And you quote these scriptures and you go over it and over it. And the problem is what you're doing is you're using the outside. You're working on the big muscles. You're doing the stuff that is an outer appearance, but you have forgotten about your core. The internal part of you, the very part of your mind that you need to dig to. I threw up a video the other week. A couple of people told me they liked it and got a lot from it. Does anybody remember it? I forgot what I called it.
We are not prey.
What was it?
We are not prey.
We are not prey. And it was about the Maasai warriors. And it was about how whenever the tribes haven't actually got enough in hunting, and I'm going to give you a brief synopsis of it. Whenever the tribes haven't got enough of hunting, from their hunting, they will gather a couple of the biggest men in the tribe, and they will go and find where the lion's pride is. And they will go to that area, and what they'll do is when they're walking towards the lions, they make themselves big. They will walk in a certain way, they'll make themselves really big, like at my height, make themselves big as they come towards these lions. As they come towards these lions. And if there's a zebra or whatever's lying there, they'll have one with a big machete and just take a bit off it, put it over the shoulders, and walk back. And the problem is for the lion is confused because the lion sees this and thinks, that's not prey. They're not reacting the same way that everything else reacts to the lion. Because whenever a zebra sees a lion, it darts, it runs. But these men are walking toward it. The lion will see you as prey. If you see a lion and you cower down like that, because you're making yourself smaller than it, it sees you as prey and it says, boom, it's dinner time. But what these Maasai warriors have got hold of is the idea that they are not responding or reacting the same way everything else reacts to the lion. You see, there's a difference between reaction and response. You see, when you react to something, it's a reflex out of you. And it's a reflex out of you that if I wake up tomorrow, my electric bill comes in or my phone bill comes in and it's too much compared to what I have in the bank, I start to freak out. That's maybe my reaction, or I start to worry, or I start to stress. Or the way I used to do it, I get a calculator out and do a million calculations to see if I can make that bill. And that's my reflex reaction. And what is great about these guys is they've taken it a little bit deeper. They've seen the problem, and instead of reacting to the problem, they've looked for a response to the problem. They have went deeper than the initial part of their mind. I heard a story years ago, see if I can remember it, about a fourth generation barbers, or, haircut, barbers. And this fourth generation barbers, his dad was obviously a barber, his granddad was a barber, and so on. And the shop had been going, same shop for 4 generations, had been going all of this time. And then the area in which he was operating, they moved in a low-cost, sort of big deal haircutting place, done low-cost haircuts, low-cost hairdressing, that undercut everything that he did. And one day his son, who was in university and didn't decide to carry on with the same tradition as what his dad did, he was studying business. His son came into the bedroom to see the dad with his hands around his head and his head in between his legs. And he says, "What's wrong, Dad?" And his dad says, "I'm going bankrupt." You see, his dad had seen this problem, that these guys came in and completely undercut him, and he had reacted a certain way. But his son, who had studied and had learned all these concepts, that says that whatever problem you're faced with, it is not a problem that you need to react to, it is a response that you need to find. He sat with his dad and he says, "Look, let's brainstorm. Let's ask a question." You see, life, if you want to get to the core, there's a way of doing it, and it's asking quality questions of yourself. These guys ended up there in a brainstorming session, and they didn't come up with new gimmicks or this, that, and the other. They came up with a sign. And it was a very, very simple sign. It wasn't a sign saying we're the best barbers in town. It was a sign saying we fix low-cost haircuts. And their business took off and went through the roof. You see, it is about seeing the immediate problem and going past it, not reacting away from it. You see, our reflex reaction, I drew this when I was doing that wee thing on the internet, the interweb. And I drew the 3 levels. The first level of your brain is your reflex reaction to everything that you see and everything that comes against you. Somebody's sick in your family, you worry. You're presented with a problem in your relationship, you stress. That's a reflex reaction. But the next level to it is the level deeper, and that's where you find reasoning. And response comes from reasoning. And you need to find a response. And Jesus was a master at this. Turn to Mark 11. I want to look at this. This is verse 27. Then they came to Jerusalem, and as he, Jesus, was walking in the temple, the chief priests, the scribes, the elders came to him, all the religious people there, and they said to him, "By what authority are you doing these things? And who gave you authority to do these things?" See, they came and they presented a question, because that's kind of what you'll get with a lot of religion, is people will go, "What, you're praying over someone? Who told you that you're righteous enough to pray over someone?" I remember a guy that I was taken to by you when I was a child, because I was very sick, and he prayed over me. He was basically told, sort of pushed out of the church, because he had a healing ministry. You see, people start going, "Oh, what makes him so special? What makes you so special?" And Jesus does something amazing. I love his way of dealing with things. But Jesus answered and said to them, "I will ask you one question, then answer me, and I will tell you by what authority I do these things." He says, "Answer me what I ask you, and then I'll tell you about who gave me this authority." And he says to them, "The baptism of John, was it from heaven or from men? Answer me." And they reasoned among themselves, saying, "If we say from heaven, he will say, 'Why did you not believe him?' But if we say from men," they feared the people, for all counted John to be a prophet indeed. So they answered and said to Jesus, "We do not know." And Jesus answered and said to them, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things." You see, the way to get, and Jesus done this throughout his whole ministry, the way to get to your core is through quality questions. I've been going with this all of this week. This is not an easy, happy, clappy sermon. This is a sermon that challenges people, because I ask God, what am I called to do? Am I called to be a pastor? No. No one's called to be a pastor. Am I equipped to be a pastor? Yes. Am I called to be a pastor? No. I'm called with a vision for God. You see, what I'm trying to say, I'm not called to be a dad. I'm equipped to be a dad. I'm not called to be a husband. I'm equipped to be a husband. My calling has a purpose, and the purpose cannot be, I'm called to be a pastor. Because that's my title, that's my role. That is not my calling. My calling is simply in our name as a church. Victory. When God called me, He wanted me to equip His people with the potential and the attributes and the things that is enclosed and the promises that are enclosed in His Word to establish victory in their lives. Because honestly, that was something that kept showing me so many Christians who would fall at the smallest of hurdles or who would crumble under the smallest of pressure. But I want to create, and this is what God gave me the vision of, a Meshach, Shadrach and Abednego church, wherever you're confronted by the fire and the furnace, that you come out not even smelling the smoke going, that's all right. And that's where promotion comes from. This is a time that Isaiah 60 tells us that the darkness will cover the land. And He is looking for His people to shine bright in that darkness. And the only way they can do that is get to a place where they're stable. So whenever the winds and the problems and the storms of life come, they are not rocked. They are not going from one side to the other. Instead, they're standing strong. And the only way you do that is not just superficially dealing and confessing the Word of God. Trust me, good to confess the Word of God. But you have to get to the core of the problem. Each of us has a thing with our core identity. Answer me this. What part of me is saved? What part of me is already saved? My spirit. My soul, my mind, will and emotions is not saved. It is being saved by the renewing of my mind. And my body, I have a hope in the rapture that my body will be saved. This is the whole point of salvation. My spirit is saved. Hebrews 10:14 says it is, we are, by one offering we are perfected. It is my spirit that is perfected. My soul, my mind, will, and emotions isn't perfect yet. But if I renew my mind, it will get there. But the problem is sometimes I'm dealing with the situations as they come against me. A storm in my marriage, a storm in my business, a storm in my health, and I'm dealing with them as they hit me. And I can guarantee you, I'm not the only one that whenever these storms come, will be rocking back and forth, will be falling off the solid rock. Psalm 40 says that He lifts us from the miry clay. And when He lifts us, not us, He establishes us on the solid rock. That's the solid rock of our salvation, our foundation. Now, spiritually, I can stand there. I may have creaks in my body, or cricks in my body, or whatever. But the problem for me is always my mind. And you will see this all the way through the Bible. People thinking, I'm not good enough. Or, I can't handle this burden. I listened to Stephen Furtick, who's a great preacher, fastest growing church in America, and he had said that once he had been in the ministry for so many years and then he was near a nervous breakdown because he couldn't handle the pressure. His response was thinking, I'm not the pastor they deserve. And that was an insecurity in him, in his foundational identity. See, every one of us has insecurities. And what we do is we kind of paste over them. But with one question, Jesus can get to the heart of the matter. And He's saying, see if you start asking yourself quality questions. Why am I a worrier? Why do I feel like this? Why do I sometimes get depressed? Or why do I sometimes get angry? Ask yourself. That's how you dig to your core foundation. See, a lot of people get saved and they've never ever dealt with the things that have been all the way through, like that barber, all the way through his lineage. The Bible calls them generational curses. He had one way of thinking the whole way until one person, his son, came along and broke it. And I'm saying to you that sometimes you need to ask yourself a quality question. I was talking to you the other day, Sam, and I was saying, I asked myself a quality question this week. I said, why do I sometimes, even in the midst of the crowd, feel alone? Why do I get to that stage where I sometimes just feel like nobody knows what's going on with me? I know the word says that he never leaves me, nor does he forsake me. But yet there's times, and I'm being honest, and don't leave me hanging here, I'm sure you guys have it too, there's times in which the kids are screaming and people are doing stuff and people are asking stuff of me, but I just feel, I wish you knew what was going on with me.
Excuse me.
And you sometimes feel like this. And I ask God, where has this come from? Where is this incessant loneliness that I sometimes feel even when I'm surrounded by people and I know in my head that you're here? And he broke it down for me. And he showed me back to when I was a kid and whenever I was a teenager and I was abandoned by my friends and spent about 2 years with zero friends at all, sitting on my own at lunchtime, sitting on my own at break time, never going out at the weekend and asking for any sort of sympathy because people go through stuff, right? And that was nothing. But what that was for me, that was a crack in my foundation of my identity. That was a crack in my foundation. So if I let in that crack, that's one thing. But see if something came along and gave it a big hit. So when my marriage broke down and I was left alone, and I would sit on my own again at weekends, and I would just stare at the walls. That crack got bigger. It reminded me, not to change subject, but it reminded me of when I taught all of the time, I had no common sense whatsoever. Probably still don't. But I remember breaking my hand, and I still had all the classes to do. So I thought, what I'll do is the boys were fighting and they needed sparring, so I would just get big heavy gloves and put my hand, wrap it up and put it in the cast so that they wouldn't really feel it, but I still felt it. And what kept happening is compounded fracture on top of fracture. And that's what happens here. One small crack. The devil is against you and his whole plan is to destroy you and bring you down. And what he wants to do, he wants to say, do you know what? You're not smart enough. You never did well in school. Or do you remember, like that was another thing for me. I asked God, why do I sometimes not feel able for the job at hand? Because I'll talk to Kelly and I say, I don't feel able to run a business and run a church. And she says, but you're doing it. In which case, I'm trying to feel sorry for myself. I don't want to listen to you, Kelly. Go away. But the truth is it goes back to the crack. And I remember P7 having my teacher write names about me and get the class to call me names on the board. And call me thick and say that I wasn't able. And that was a crack. So when somebody else says it later in my future, boom, that crack opens up. And this is what the devil wants with every one of you. I don't know what the cracks are in your lives. Maybe they go back to parental stuff. Maybe they go back to a sibling. Maybe it's a case if you never had the relationship with someone that you wanted. Whatever it is, it's a crack in your foundation. And unless you ask a quality question, you can never get to the heart of the matter of why you feel that certain way. So whenever the storms of life come, you will be like James said, and James warns against this, about being a man tossed and fro by the waves. That you're up and down 1 minute. 1 minute you're on a high, next minute you're on a low. 1 minute you're on a high going the world's great, next minute you're going a low. You know, that is so common nowadays. So common. But it's core stability that brings victory. Having the core so strong in who he has created me to be. You see, the whole thing that I need to do, and you need to do, is that with this foundational rock, in fact, do this, we'll come back to this. Turn to Matthew 16. I want to show you, we'll come back to this. This is Peter. I identify with Peter. Paul is the great New Testament apostle. He's the one that everybody goes, wow, I want to be like Paul. Peter's the one that we're probably most like. Verse 13 says, when Jesus came into the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, saying, who do men say that I am? that I, the Son of Man, am? So they said, some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, and others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. Do you get what Jesus is doing here? Jesus is saying, who do men say that I am? Because he knows that most of us, as human beings, are more concerned about what somebody else says about us, and we identify with what somebody else thinks about us more than what God says about us. We do it all the time. He said that, you know what, you're no good at that. You're not smart enough. So you identify with that, you take that identity on. So he's saying to these disciples, who do men say that I am? And they're able to rhyme it off. Some say John the Baptist, some Elijah, others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. He said to them, but who do you say that I am? Simon Peter answered and said, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. You're the Christ, the Son of the living God. See, Simon had revelation here. And Jesus knew it. Jesus answered and said, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I also will say to you that you are Peter, Cephas, rock, and on you, the rock, I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. And whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. You see, what he's got, Peter's just had this revelation. And you see, there will be cracks in your identity from what people have said about you all the time and what's happened in your life. And maybe you were abandoned as a child, or maybe you were hurt in a relationship, or maybe it was just a case of, somebody called you a name when you were younger and it stuck with you and you can never, but it became a little fissure, a little crack in your identity. And unless that is fixed, what you're doing is you're going to be working on your biceps, triceps, and the things that are for show, but your core is going to be weak. So you'll not be able to stand up to the storms of life. And I said our vision is to be a bright, shining light in the days of darkness. So for that to happen, this foundation needs to be strong. This core needs to be strong. Peter has this massive revelation. And here's the kicker. Revelation is how you fix every single fissure or crack in your identity. It is through revelation of who God says we are. I don't think I'm able. God says I can do all things through Christ. Through Christ. I am well able. God doesn't call you and then let you hang. He calls you and then He equips you. I think to myself, I am not smart enough. Well, my goodness, if you look all the way through the Bible, there's people that you would say, not the brightest. But my goodness, they prospered. Abraham messed up quite a few times. Wouldn't have won husband of the year. Telling people that his wife is his sister and letting her be taken off. He wasn't smart in that way, and that's you need to be smart when you're dealing with your spouse. But in truth, he wasn't. But yet he was the most prosperous man of the age. Even just by being next to him. Lot had an abundance. He was so blessed. It's not about your smarts. It's not about what you know. It's about who you know. So it's taking this cracked foundation of our mind and allowing the revelation of who God is and who He says we are cover each one of those cracks. Peter has this revelation, but just like most of us, once he's had a revelation, something else hits. The old crack is still there. You see, when Jesus then says what is going to happen to him, Peter says, nah, it's all right, Lord, that won't happen to you. Not when you got me. I'm a big lad. See, he's used to being that big fisherman who was probably spitting, cursing, starting fights. He's used to being that guy that says, it's all right, Lord, see when you're with me, come with me, I'll chop her ears off. And that old insecureness came out. And quite often, the way to see someone's insecurity is to see what they're projecting rather than what they're reflecting. What we project, sometimes we can be the loudest person in the room, and quite often it's to conceal the cracks in our own identity. Sometimes we can project confidence, but inside we're nervous. We're shaken. Sometimes we can present a degree of calmness, but really, we're like ducks with their feet going mad underwater. What I'm saying is the world is full of projection. Facebook, take it. You see what people are having for dinner. You see how good their lives are supposed to look. Oh my goodness, aren't they amazing? They have a permanent all-year tan. They have cars they're taking pictures of these cars, and their kids are always looking good and standing perfectly. They have no stains on their clothing, ever. There's nobody pulling somebody else's hair. But what you're seeing is a projection, not a reality. Because 10 seconds, 20 seconds before, I guarantee one of those kids were hitting the other kids. I guarantee the woman was still fixing her face and her hair before the camera went. I go past that and guarantee there was 100 photos and one was chosen. See, people want to project an image. And God is saying it's not about projection, it's about reflection. It's through beholding Him that we change. You see, by projecting this image, we're ignoring the fact that our foundation still has cracks in it. Peter had a revelation. 2 seconds later, he's back to that old projection, shoulders back, chest out, holding 2 TVs, shouting, "Won't happen, Jesus. I won't let it happen. I'll knock them out." And Jesus turns to him and says, "Look, get behind me, Satan. You are an offense to me." Now everybody quotes that, but this is the thing that they miss. "For you are not mindful of things of God," the foundation of who He says we are and what He says we're about, "but the things of men." Peter had a revelation of who Jesus was. He didn't at this stage have a revelation of who he was in Christ. Now you fast forward to Acts 12. Acts 12, verse 11. Jesus has been in prison, Peter has been in prison. And the guys, all the Christian church, all the people, the followers of the way, had all been praying for him. But they hadn't really been doing anything. You know, I don't know if it were me, I'd appreciate your prayers, but I'd expect a visit. I'd expect you, bringing me in a file and a cake and bringing it to my door. Or at least picking it outside saying, "Free our pastor." But none of that. They were sitting there and said, "We'll pray for you, Peter." And I don't know, Peter I relate to. I think he was thinking, "That's all right, you pray away. But where's the real help?" And it goes here. "And when Peter had come," this is when he had been freed, an angel of the Lord came down and miraculously freed Peter from prison. "And when Peter had come to himself, he said, 'Now I know for certain that the Lord has sent His angel, and He has delivered me from the hand of Herod and from all the expectation of the Jewish people.'" See, beforehand, he'd be sitting in prison. And I'd be going, everybody knows that I was a follower of Christ. In fact, they know that I was one of the three who were in His inner circle, who had privy to seeing Him change form before me on the mountain of transfiguration and show His real divine glory. I saw that. It's recorded. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody knows about it. But I'm sitting in prison. And I am sure that maybe it's just me. It doesn't say this in the Bible, but I think that through Peter's mind would have went, "What are they thinking? Are they thinking that, maybe Peter was just a hanger-on that they were trying to get away from? And he just kept following that 3 around Jesus? Maybe Peter was the one that, we hear is restored by Jesus, but maybe that was just an addition, just to appease Peter." And I'm sure all these thoughts were going through his head because Peter was always worried about what people thought. He was basing his identity on what everybody else thought about him as opposed to what God said about him. Even when he denied Christ, it was because he was afraid of the repercussions of what people thought about him, and afraid of the repercussions of what people would do to him, and afraid of the repercussions of people. But here, he is freed from the expectation of people. You are not what people say you are. You are not who people say you are. You are bigger, better, stronger, faster, more able than what people have said you are in your life. but yet you still believe it. You see, the quality questions we ask of ourselves will dig us to the core of why we feel how we feel when times are tough. But if we don't go past the quality questions and strengthen ourselves through who He says we are when times are tough, then all we're doing is looking at our own deformities in our mind, looking at our own cracks. So I'm saying to you right now, ask. Ascertain who you are at your core. Ascertain why you are a certain way. Why do you crumble under pressure? Why do you worry? Why do you stress? All the things that the Bible tells us not to do. Why are you doing it? Ask yourself. Is it because of something that happened to you when you were 6 years old? Or is it just something that you feel? Ask yourself. And when you've asked yourself, when you've ascertained it, you need to strengthen yourself in Him. You need to say, oh, do you know what? That P7 teacher may have said that I'm not able. That P7 teacher may have called me all the names under the sun and put them up on the board. But at the end of the day, he didn't know me. My God knows me. When he called me stupid, my God told me I was well able. When he said that I wasn't enough, my God told me I was more than enough. You have to strengthen yourself in who He says you are. And then, so that's A, S, and K. Keep doing it. This isn't something that happens overnight. If I get down, and this is where I am at my age in my training, my physicality, compared to what I was maybe 20 years before, if I'm going to do sit-ups, I will think about doing sit-ups for 4 weeks before I do a sit-up. Right? I'll go, and to be honest, I break a mental sweat going, oh, I worked out today, wasn't that good? And I'll think about doing it. I'll think about the times you would have been able to do 500 sit-ups and these and stuff like that there, and wouldn't have affected me. And then eventually I'll get down and do 50 sit-ups and go, that's enough for a day. I'll see you next month. You see, you can't treat your identity like that. You can't treat the core of your identity like someone who frequents the gym in January and isn't seen till next January. You have to frequent it every day. You have to get up, and sometimes you've got to get in front of a mirror, and sometimes you've just got to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. God, you love me. I am your beloved. I am strong. I am well able. And it doesn't matter what anybody has said about me in the past or says about me in the future, because when you created me, you broke the mold. There's no one else like me. I am perfect in your eyes. And you created me specifically for a purpose. Some of us go our whole lives not able to find that purpose. And the only way to find that purpose is to dig to your core through quality questions. Ask yourself a quality question. Do what Jesus did. Who do people say I am? Why did you kill John the Baptist? Or even just a simple question that whenever he meets the woman at the well in John 4. Where's your husband? Boom, straight to the core. I don't have a husband. You said, well, you've had 5 and now the one that you're with is not your husband. Cut to the core. We're too busy projecting an image that isn't real. And I'm saying, if you get to the core, your image will be real, but it'll be strong to withhold any storm. We're finishing. I want to say this. This is something that I want you to do this week. I want you to start asking yourself these questions. I want you to look at yourself and say, do I worry a lot? Do I stress a lot? Do I fear a lot? Do I think less of myself? Do I constantly say I'm not worthy? Do I start saying this stuff to myself, that really God has said the complete opposite about? Now that's great if you ask yourself those questions, but then add in the one word that changes everything. Why? What is it that made you think like that? Who is it that made you think like that? Are you listening to people instead of God? Get to the core, strengthen the core with what He says, and then just keep doing it. And I guarantee, see when this darkness gets deeper and stronger and more profound, and it's already happening, despite the sun shining, darkness spiritually across the land, across the world, I guarantee you'll shine because you will be stable. Your core will be stable. You won't be pushed. You won't feel jealousy, hurt, and pain because of something that's coming against you. Because you'll know who you are.